What if I told you the world's biggest phone maker, a company so dominant it felt invincible, collapsed in less than a decade? A titan that once held nearly half of the entire mobile phone market just vanished. Did you know that in 2007, Nokia controlled an astonishing 40% of the mobile phone market? But today, they're barely a footnote in the smartphone world. What went wrong? How does a king lose its crown so spectacularly? This isn't just a story about a failed company. It's a cautionary tale about innovation, arrogance, and the danger of ignoring the future. Let's break it down. Video intro sequence, Nokia versus iPhone sales graph, quick montage of old Nokia models like the 3310, N95, and 8110 Matrix phone. To understand the fall, you first have to appreciate the climb. In the late 90s and early 2000s, Nokia wasn't just a phone company, it was the phone company. They were pioneers. They made mobile phones accessible, stylish, and personal. Remember the interchangeable faceplates? That was Nokia. The iconic ringtone? That was Nokia. They dominated globally. From Europe to Asia, a Nokia phone was a status symbol, a work tool, and a lifeline. Their models were legendary for their simplicity, their long battery life, and of course, their sheer durability. These things were tanks. The Nokia 3310 has become a meme for a reason. It was practically indestructible. Dropping it wasn't a problem. The real worry was damaging the floor. Visuals, old Nokia commercials, a montage of Nokia memes about indestructible phones. Nokia was on top of the world. They sold hundreds of millions of phones. Their brand was synonymous with quality and reliability. They were the undisputed kings, and it seemed like their reign would never end. What was your first Nokia phone? I bet you have a story. Drop it in the comments below. I'd love to read it. Then, in 2007, everything changed. A man in a black turtleneck walked onto a stage in San Francisco and introduced a device with no physical keyboard, a giant touchscreen, and a revolutionary idea: the internet in your pocket. It was the iPhone. And Nokia laughed. They fundamentally underestimated Apple. They saw the iPhone not as a computer, but as a fragile, expensive toy with a terrible battery life that couldn't possibly challenge their robust, efficient hardware. They were a hardware company, and they believed superior hardware would always win. While Apple was building a gateway to the internet, Nokia was still just building phones. They also underestimated Google. Android was released shortly after, offering an open-source alternative that allowed countless manufacturers to create their own smartphones. The market was flooding with new, exciting competitors. But Nokia was stubborn. They had their own operating system, Symbian. It had served them well for years. It was stable, efficient, and familiar. But it was also old, clunky, and not built for the new world of touchscreens and apps. Developers found it difficult to work with, and the user experience felt ancient compared to the slick, intuitive interfaces of iOS and Android. Nokia stuck with Symbian for far too long, convinced their brand loyalty and hardware would be enough. They were wrong. Visuals, timeline graphics showing the 2007 iPhone release, then a steep, dramatic drop in Nokia's market share from 2008 to 2012. So, why didn't they adapt? This is where the story gets really interesting, because the problem wasn't a lack of talent. Nokia had brilliant engineers. They were experimenting with touchscreens, app stores, and even tablet-like devices years before the iPhone or iPad. The problem was the culture. Inside Nokia, there was a deep-seated fear of risk. The company was a massive, bureaucratic machine optimized for producing millions of reliable, profitable feature phones. Disrupting that successful formula was seen as a threat. Internal conflicts between different departments created chaos. The hardware teams, the software teams, and the design teams were all fighting their own battles, not a unified war. Visuals, stock footage of a tense boardroom meeting with text overlays like fear of change, internal conflict, and risk aversion. Management was paralyzed. They saw the storm coming, they had reports, they had prototypes, but they couldn't bring themselves to make the bold, terrifying decision to cannibalize their existing cash cow, the Symbian phones, to bet on an unproven future. They were afraid of failure, and that fear guaranteed it. While competitors were moving at lightning speed, Nokia was stuck in endless meetings, debating the risk of change. The launch of the iPhone and the App Store in 2008 marked a fundamental shift in the industry. The war was no longer about who could build the best physical phone. It was about who could build the best ecosystem. It was a software war. Apple understood this perfectly. The iPhone wasn't just a device. It was a key to a world of applications, music, and services. The App Store created a virtuous cycle. More apps attracted more users, which in turn attracted more developers to build more apps. It was a brilliant strategy that created a powerful, sticky ecosystem that was incredibly difficult to leave. Visuals: a split screen showing the clean, vibrant Apple App Store launching versus screenshots of Nokia's outdated and confusing OVI Store UI. What did Nokia do? They doubled down on hardware. They continued to release dozens of different models, each with slight variations, confusing consumers and fragmenting their own efforts. Their software experience, the OVI Store, was a disaster. Unintuitive, buggy, and lacking the killer apps that made the iPhone so compelling. They were fighting a hardware battle in a software war, and they were losing badly. By 2011, Nokia was in freefall. They were desperate. They finally acknowledged that Symbian was a dead end and announced a landmark partnership with Microsoft. They would abandon their own software entirely and adopt Windows Phone as their exclusive operating system for all future smartphones. On paper, it sounded like a powerful alliance. Two giants of technology coming together to challenge Apple and Google. The new phones, branded as the Lumia line, were beautiful. The hardware was stunning, with vibrant colors and a unibody design that stood out. And the Windows Phone operating system, with its live tiles, was actually quite slick and innovative. But it was too little, too late. Visuals: clips of the Windows Phone UI, followed by a pie chart showing its tiny market share compared to iOS and Android. The problem was timing, and once again, the ecosystem. By the time the first Nokia Lumia phones hit the market, the world had already chosen its winners. iOS and Android had a multi-year head start. Their app stores had hundreds of thousands of apps. Windows Phone had almost none. There was no Instagram, no Snapchat, and a subpar YouTube experience. For consumers, buying a Windows Phone meant being locked out of the digital world their friends inhabited. It was a beautiful, empty house. The partnership was a gamble that didn't pay off, sealing Nokia's fate in the smartphone market. Here's the tragic irony. Nokia did so many things right, but their timing was always off. Their PureView camera technology, introduced in phones like the 808 PureView and Lumia 1020, was light years ahead of the competition. We're talking 41 megapixels in 2012. It was an engineering marvel. The design of the Lumia series, particularly the Lumia 920, was critically acclaimed and influenced phone design for years to come. Visuals: a stunning demo clip from a Lumia camera, showcasing its low-light capabilities or incredible zoom. They had the talent. They had the innovation. But these flashes of brilliance were buried under years of strategic blunders. They were brilliant ideas trapped on a burning platform. The world had already moved on. If you're finding this breakdown interesting, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel. The perfect case study is comparing the first iPhone to Nokia's flagship at the time, the N95. The N95 was, by all technical measures, a superior device. It had a better camera, GPS, a front-facing camera for video calls, and 3G connectivity. It was a pocket powerhouse. The first iPhone didn't even have 3G. Visuals: a side-by-side comparison of the first iPhone and the Nokia N95, highlighting the N95's superior hardware specs on one side and the iPhone's simple, large touchscreen on the other. But Apple didn't sell specs. They sold an experience. The iPhone's revolutionary multi-touch interface and its full-fledged web browser changed the game. It was intuitive. It was fun. It was the future. Nokia offered a powerful but complicated device. Apple offered a simple, elegant window to the internet, and the market chose simplicity and experience over a complex list of features. Nokia won the battle on the spec sheet, but Apple won the war for the user's heart. So, what's the ultimate lesson here? It's a powerful one that every single business, big or small, needs to understand. Market dominance means nothing if you aren't willing to adapt. Nokia's story is the ultimate proof that success can breed complacency. They were so focused on protecting their current success that they failed to create their future success. The famous business saying goes, if you don't disrupt yourself, someone else will. Nokia had the chance to disrupt the market. They had the engineers, the research, and the brand. But they didn't have the courage, so Apple and Google did it for them. Being the biggest doesn't make you the safest. In today's fast-paced world, adaptability is the ultimate competitive advantage. Visuals, bold animated text overlay reading, adaptability, market dominance, and, if you don't disrupt yourself, someone else will. Nokia's story is a tragedy, but it's also an incredible lesson. They are still around today, of course, primarily as a telecom network equipment company, having sold their phone division to Microsoft, which eventually wrote it off as a massive loss. The Nokia phone brand has since been licensed to HMD Global, which makes Android phones, but it's a shadow of its former self. Do you think Nokia could ever make a real comeback in the phone market? Let me know your thoughts. So, the big question remains, was Nokia's fall inevitable, or could they have won the smartphone war if they had made a few different decisions? Tell me what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please give this video a like, subscribe for more breakdowns of the biggest stories in business and tech, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.